Hi everyone, welcome back to Lair Academy. It's Mickey again, and in this lesson we're going to be creating a simple artisan command that will allow us to generate new users for our knowledge base system. Now, since all of our users are going to be administrators of the system, we're able to get away with this simple command. So let's dive right in by opening up a terminal and creating this new command. We'll type in PHP artisan make command, and the flag that we want to pass in is the command name. The command that we're going to be using is make user. So once artisan creates this command, let's switch over to our IDE, and if we expand our folder structure, we'll go into app, and then you can see we have console, we have a new folder called commands, and within this folder we have a new file which is makeuser.php. Now let's take a couple of seconds and look at the command itself. We have a signature, which is how we're going to call it using PHP artisan. Underneath the signature, we have a description, where we're going to fill this in case we forget what the command is used for. And underneath, we have our constructor, and we also have a handle function. Now, this handle function is going to be called or fired every time that we run our command, so that's going to be where the bulk of our code goes. Let's start off by editing the signature. We'll say make user. We'll scroll down and change the description. We'll say this command will generate a new user. Now let's scroll all the way down to our handle function. We're going to be asking the user a series of questions. The first thing we need to store or ask is what email address. So let's create an email address variable, and we're going to use a ask function, and we'll say user email address. So this is going to be getting input from the screen, and it's going to store the email address in the email itself. Now we need a way to validate this email. The quickest way we can do this is using Laravel's a validator class. So let's go up to the top. Let's make sure that we import by saying use validator. And at the very bottom, we'll create a new function. The function we're going to call validate email, and the variable that we pass in is the email address. To use a validator, we're going to have to pass in some data. That data is just going to be an array, and that's going to contain the email address. The next thing we need is going to be a set of rules. The rules we're just going to set up for the email are pretty simple. We'll just say it needs to be required, and it needs to be an email address. The next thing we need to do is create a validator itself, and we'll just say validator make, and we need to pass in the data that we want validated and then the rules that it wants to run against. Alright, this is the tricky part here, and let's actually just write it and we'll explain as we go. So we're going to have to return a Boolean value for our validate email, and we'll use the validator fails method. And what we want to say is if it fails, so it equals true, then for our validator itself, because the email address was not correct, we want to return false to our function, otherwise true. Now this doesn't look very pretty, but basically what we're saying is if our validator fails, so the rules are not met, so that function returns true, then our validate email function must return false. The other way that we could easily write this is we could just say return, and then we could say not validator fails. So if our validator fails becomes true, we're going to automatically switch it to false. If it's false, then once again we'll just switch it to true. Now I'm going to stick with this one just for a little bit of readability. Alright, now with that out of the way, let's take a look at how we can use this. We could say if not this validate email. So what we're saying here is if our email address is not valid, then we're going to return an error message, and the error message, let's just say email address is invalid. And we have to just exit the function, so we'll put a return in there. Now that we know the email address is valid, let's generate a random password. For this, we'll create a variable called password, and we're going to be using the Laravel helper function called strrandom, and we're going to be using 8 random characters. Now, just for readability, I'll put this at the top because we're not really saving a lot of memory by having it underneath. Now, the next thing I want to do is show the user the information that they've entered as well as the password. So we'll use a comment function, and we'll spit out the email address followed by the variable email. Let's just copy and paste this underneath, and we'll change this to password. Now just to note here that this password is going to be plain text, so it's not going to be encrypted. Now we need to confirm whether or not it's okay to generate this user. So let's do a simple check. We can say if not, this confirm. And we want to pass a message to the user. So we can say, are you sure you want to create this user? So if this confirm is equal to false, let's just exit out of this function. Now, if the confirm is equal to true, we're going to come down here and we're going to generate the user. So first, let's actually import the user itself. And underneath, we'll just say user create. And let's actually take a look at our user.php. You can see we have 3 fields. We have name, email, and password. Now we didn't ask the name, so what we're going to do is we're just going to use the email address as the name as well. So we'll just pass an email for name, and we'll just copy and paste and change name to email. And finally, the last one is going to be the password. And we don't need to send in the plain text password, so we want to decrypt it, and we'll pass in the password to that function. So now our password will be 100% correct. So let's show the information to the user that has been created successfully. Now our command is 100% complete. Make sure we save this. If we're running Laravel 5.4 or lower, we would have to come into the kernel.php and add our command into this protected commands field here. However, because we're running Laravel 5.5, we can leave this field blank, and if we run php artisan, it's going to list all the commands that we have available. If we scroll up just a tiny bit, you can see that we have a make user. So automatically this comes in for us to use. We don't really have to do anything. Once again, the signature matches up with the make user, and our description matches up as well. Now let's actually run this command. So we can say php artisan make user. You can see that we have a user email address. If we try to put in an invalid email address, we obviously get this error code. So we know that our validation is working. Let's fill it in with a proper email address. So we'll use example at example.com. You can see we're given the email address and the password and whether or not we want to generate this user. So let's actually go ahead and generate this user. You can see that the user has been generated, so we can easily check this by using php artisan tinker. Once tinker loads up, we'll just take a quick look at our app user table. And you can see here we have the example at example.com. We have the name, the email, and the one thing that we're missing here is password. But I can guarantee that if we grab this user, we'll grab the first one because there's only one, and we check out the password, this is actually the encrypted password that we passed through, which is the random 8 characters. Now that we have users in our database, the next thing that I want to work on is a backend so that our users can enter categories and articles. Thanks for watching.